Welcome. It is December 8th, and this is another edition of hashtag DigLead Book Club, a series that I started after my book came out, Digital Leadership in Higher Education. Gosh, and that was in September. Pretty wild where the months go. But here we are heading toward the end of the year. And in this month, I'm excited to be having a couple more leaders who are featured in the book. Whether you have checked out the book or not, my goal is to always openly showcase and feature the people doing this kind of work, how to lead online and in life. So I want to welcome you wherever you are logging in from. We are live streaming to LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So let me know in the comments who is joining us today. Say a little hello. And it is a celebratory time of year. We just had Thanksgiving here in the US, and we're moving into our holiday and end of the year celebrations, whatever that looks like for us now. But I would love to know just one simple thing that you might be celebrating so we can add a little bit of gratitude into the interwebs today, which is definitely connected a bit to what I'm going to talk about with my guest, who I'm going to bring on in just a moment. Again, if you haven't checked out my book, Digital Leadership in Higher Education, I believe there is a discount on it through the rest of this year. Go to Stylus Publishing, and they got all the most recent discounts on the book listed. Could be a great stocking stuffer. I also have them right over there. You can see them in the background. Maybe every time they'll be kind of like Easter eggs, I move them somewhere else so you can find them somewhere else in my office, or maybe I just make them into shoulder pads. Who knows? All right, with any further ado, I am excited to bring on my guest today, who is Joe Sabato, who has one of the most coolest but also longest titles. So I have to read it to make sure I get it right. He's the Associate Chief Information Officer of Student Affairs and Executive Director for Student Information Systems and Technology at the University of California, Santa Barbara, right up the road from me here in Los Angeles. Welcome, Joe.
Welcome, Josie. How are you?
I am doing pretty well. You know, our whole state is back in lockdown. So you are very familiar, but it's good to have a familiar face on the show.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for including me in your series. I see guests, distinguished guests like Melissa Wu, who's going to be your next guest, I think, next week,
It is,
in
yeah.
April. And those are folks that I just follow online. And so I'm grateful for being part of the series. And, we've known each other for a while, and I've seen your successes. And I'm always like smiling when I see your post or your next venture. When did we see each other for the first time? Was it November 2014, right? It was Washington, D.C.
Well, yeah, it probably was the first time we met, and I spilled my vanilla latte down your back because I wanted to hug you. I'm a hugger. And so this COVID thing is really hard for me. I was so excited. We were meeting all kinds of people at the time that we were meeting, just all these colleagues through Twitter, and to have that cool opportunity to connect. And I would be so interested. So we got together to talk about technology and student affairs, and to envision and problem solve and plan out like the future and what was, and this was before NASP and ACPA had tech competencies, I think. Yeah. But I'd be so interested to read that report that we were part of creating, and how those things are living out or not, or need to live out. Need to happen. So talking about throwbacks, I have to grab something else. I should have had this ready, but it just made me remember this. Okay, hold on.
All right.
I'm pretty sure this is the one. Okay. So I think it had to happen within the first year that we met. You reached out to me and I was in my doctorate and you're like, hey, I was reached out to co-author this one chapter. I just don't think I can do it. Can you do it? And of course I was this, like eager doc student and first just getting out there and blogging and things. And so my very first publication was in this huge text. Okay. Keep in mind. So this is my, first publication. I just have a chapter in here. So it's like, I don't know how many pages with someone else, but you were the one that suggested me as a author to contribute to a chapter on technology and student affairs. So I get to publicly thank you for that. You were my start of my authorship early on.
Well, no, thank you. I mean, I think for both of us, what's driven us, I think certainly you, is this idea of a connector, right? So, and I've seen you do that through building communities on Facebook. I mean, I go to conferences and you set up these meetups, and so to me, it's fun just knowing you and just hanging out with you because I get to meet people that I don't think I would meet otherwise. It's interesting when that NASPA summit, it was a technology summit in 2014. So this was before I think technology became a competency within the student affairs professional competency.
Right.
We were already talking about technology, at that point in time in the digital world. And it's not, Kevin Guidry, I think Mistaken Goal is the website, would remind us that technology has been part of student affairs, since 1920s or before that. Right. So it isn't like technology and student affairs is a new thing. It's been there forever, for every decade. But I think it was that time when we started thinking about like, how do you intentionally use student technology, not just in student affairs, but in higher ed in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you were an early blogger that inspired my blogging through my doc program and even Twitter. Like I've mentioned a few different times that I made a goal to tweet every day. I think it was actually in December. Maybe that was like 2012 or 2013. I was like, hey, Joe, you're one of my inspirations to do that. Because I was just intimidated of it at the time. And live streaming now, too. Like, as new tools come in, we have to, like, shake off a little bit of, like, intimidation and get used to them. Because, like, issues will happen, right? I've totally lost internet on these streams before. Or, like, I'm sure my mic will pop up at some point because it's just ornery like that. So being okay with those things.
Well, I remember that call. I think it was a text actually. I was in Irvine and I just got off a conference and I got this text from Josie. He goes, can I talk with you? And I remember that text says, I will tweet, I think 50 days in a row. And you told me that. So I've always known you as someone who has, who's intentional in what you do. And so even way back when you talk about the book, when I asked, I requested that you take this on. I mean, the work you were doing back then, as far as digital leadership, I knew you were going somewhere. You were one of the few scholars I knew that was a practitioner, but also doing the scholarship work. So I figured, like, you know what, you can do this better than I ever will. I did a lot of reading, but I couldn't articulate that. So I'm glad that it worked out.
Oh, yeah, I know. Well, so it's fun to talk about early days. There was a few, like you were early blogging about Google Glasses and even early of Pokemon Go. And I actually messaged you recently being like, do you still use Pokemon Go? You're like, yes, I'm using it right now.
I was.
How has your use of Pokemon Go changed in the pandemic?
And yes, I'm like level 40 for Pokemon players. I've been at level 40 for many months now. But Pokemon Go allows me to still make connections with other people. So there's this new feature in Pokemon Go, like remote, I think Raid it's called. And so that's giving me actually the opportunity to meet other people, but it's also giving me the opportunity to still go outside with my partner. We live in a beautiful place called Buellton in next to a Danish town called Solvang, which is like 30 minutes north of Santa Barbara, and it's so amazing. It's a small town, but we never get tired of just going there, walking there every single day. So Pokemon, I like gamification. So that's one of the ways that I get motivated. And so Pokemon just allows me to have the connection that I would probably want to have, but also allows me to still go outside, enjoy the environment, walk a couple miles. And so to me, Pokemon is still like, something that I use every day. There's new challenges. That's how I connect with friends. And then it allows my partner and I to just go outside and just do some walking.
Yeah. Well, and it's pandemic friendly for
Yeah.
our challenges of today. Talking about gamification and another tool and a toy, not a toy, it is a tool for sure, that we have both invested in this year is Peloton. What have you thought of Peloton so far?
I was very skeptical with Peloton, frankly, as a bike. And so I have many friends who are like, they're posting their achievements, their workout. And here I am saying, and by the way, being vulnerable here, and I told this to my staff in a meeting. He says, "Thank you for saying that." But I gained some pounds during the pandemic. I wasn't walking as much anymore and not being able to do things. And so I said, you know what, let's try Peloton. I'm the kind of person who likes going outside, but the idea of just having the stationary bike is like, to me, it's not really appealing. But here's what appealed me to the idea and ultimately led me to buying Peloton is the gamification piece, right? So, and there's like the social piece of it. We're able to kind of, just talk about our experience with other folks, friends. But you know what I found out about Peloton? It's not so much about the bike in itself. I Once you start changing a part of yourself, in this case, like I want to work out again, what I found was it got me back to thinking about like learning, about myself, the self growth, emotional growth, intellectual learning. And so I knew this way back when I don't like exercising like in the gym, stationary. So the trick that I use is when I'm doing like treadmill or just running, I buy like an audiobook that maybe like an hour's worth of audiobook or 30 minutes that I have to finish, right? So I have to finish the audiobook and I hate like stopping in the middle. So that was my motivation. So here's what I do now. It's like multitasking, productivity hack. But every time I ride on my bike, I always listen to podcasts or I listen to like audiobook. And so I have my iPad, I have my little like iPhone and just taking notes. Because I found that like sometimes when I get really good ideas from a podcast, I often have to like stop and take notes. So now I have my iPad with a Bluetooth. I have my iPhone. So here I am, right? So like I'm riding my bike, getting some exercise. I'm learning about myself. And then also just spending the time, to me, that's maybe considered mindfulness. But I did not expect that, frankly. Again, I was skeptical and then come to find out it is a way for me to grow in other parts of my life. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, well, it's holistic, right? We invest in some kind of wellness, physical, spiritual, mental, and other pockets open up around us. So interesting that you're listening to audiobooks and podcasts. So are you doing the like choose your own road, or are you really multitasking and listening to an instructor and listening to different audio?
Oh, different audios. Like, sometimes I'd go on YouTube, frankly, whatever. I've been on this emotional well-being, the growth of that. And then, so I'm what you call an autodidact. So I like to learn on my own. So, I've done some formal training, but I'm the kind of person that just likes to learn. Maybe that's my personality. I just like to hoard some knowledge. But I love learning. So I've developed this system where, Blinkist is one of the things that I use. So it kind of gives you a summary of books. If you don't want to read the whole book, you can do a Blinkist in 15 minutes, right? So it gives you the summary. I'll listen to podcasts that's based on leadership and professional growth and then personal growth. So I just I go on the series, say I want to learn about self-confidence for the next month, right? So then I start looking for podcasts on that topic, and so I just have my schedule. I found a new app it's called like Glide apps.
Light?
GLI. Yeah, it's like you can actually use that to build an application, and Google Sheet is behind that. So I had to find an easy way to like when I find something on the web, to kind of make a note of that, to copy the URL, copy the title, and then so while I'm like kind of perusing and browsing through the web, I can just store that. Uh, so I have my Glide apps, I have my books that I've read, Kindle that I've books, books that are there, podcasts that I want to listen to, and then so when I'm ready to like get on my Peloton, and I just look at my list and say, press play.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
I stumbled somehow on Amazon. I think I was just curious, like if I put Peloton into the search of Amazon, what are they going to sell me? Like obviously the bikes aren't sold there. And there's all these attachments for people that want to do work or like have a notepad or something. So if you really did want to outfit your bike for work or for like a note attachment, they've got them because they know people are trying to, I guess, multitask on these bikes. So,
Yeah.
well, that's awesome. And I'm really liking the social part too, to be like, oh, someone else you're connected with is working out right now, or they did this class, and it's just little pockets of connection that kind of get us by right now. So to kind of get digging into like the meat and potatoes of taking advantage of the time that we have together, you come in with so much experience in technology, formally in information technology, but I feel like you've got really interesting perspective, both in student affairs as well as, I mean, macro across the campus. And so I'm sure you observe a lot over time, but especially this last year, both in your institution, but I feel like, like me, we're always kind of tapped into learning and what other people are doing. But we're starting to see this term used a bit more often, that mostly EDUCAUSE, at least for me, was where I was reading it. And then from you, called digital transformation. And this was actually a section that I added to the book last minute, in addition to research and concepts that have been done around digital identity, digital reputation, digital literacy. So if you were to give us, like, Joe, like a mini lecture, a heads up about what is digital transformation, especially to colleagues who aren't in IT. How would you describe, not just by definition, but in practice, what do you see digital transformation, especially in higher education?
Well, Josie, you didn't ask me to do a lecture today.
It was a joke. No lecture.
When you ask me that question, it's really interesting because it's such a loaded term, right? Digital transformation. I think that's the most basic core of that definition. It's process. It's a journey. Right? It's a journey of using digital technologies to create a new process, create a new culture and customer experience. So there's the digital part and there's the transformation word. So when we talk about digital, you talk about cloud, social media, AI, robotics, what else? Name data. Data is a piece of it as well, analytics. But to me, the reason why I get interested in, you mentioned Google Glass earlier. You mentioned Pokemon. I have Snap. I have Oculus Rift, Oculus Go, Quest. What really interests me in those technologies isn't so much about the technology itself. I like gadgets. But to me, what really interests me is the sociological, the non-technology piece of it, right? So that's where the transformation is such a loaded term, because yes, digital. A lot of times, folks focus on the digital part, but really, what interests me, and I think what you're seeing it now, how complex the word is, transformation, is it involves culture, right? It involves change, it involves people, it involves change management, it's politics. And so while the word digital transformation is just two words, it's such a loaded, complex term. So let me give an example of how it's been implemented in higher ed. And the funny thing is, when I introduced this term at UC Santa Barbara probably about before COVID. And this is not a unique experience, by the way. I had my slides. I had this term from EDUCAUSE. Digital transformation is this coordinated effort, a shift in technology, culture, people, blah, 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 right? So I had that slide every single time we met with the team. And the team says, what does that mean? So it's an abstract term. But we saw now with COVID, the pandemic, that, you see a lot of transformation that was happening there. Right, let me give you some examples. In the student support area, the idea of having like this telemedicine, right, even counseling. Right. Before COVID, that was an idea that was, for some people, it's like, that's not going to happen. We're in student affairs. We only do student support physically. We have to be in the same room. And so with COVID, really forced the mindset, the shift in mindset to say, is that something that we can do? The question is no longer, should we do it? It's become like, how do we do it well? So that's one example, right? So telemedicine, counseling, therapy. Another one is in learning field, right? So now it's Zoom or using some other technology. So the pedagogy has changed as well. So, unfortunately, this is what we experienced was more of like a remote learning, as opposed to like this online education where it's very, you prepare for that. There's some pedagogical thoughts behind that. But, we were placed in a position where in a week we had to pretty much kind of transform the way we deliver lectures or instructions. So that's one way in the instruction field. Let me find some other ones too, because I was doing some research on this.
So you did prepare a lecture. See.
Oh, here's another one, right? So, like chatbots. Chatbots are that's such like a growing part of digital transformation now. Yeah. Let's see, queue management systems, right? I mean, the idea then is like, how do you transform, or how do you provide services that in the past would have been physical, and on campus to now, on the digital world and online. So here's another example, robots, right? I think University of Houston, Purdue, they had like, robots doing delivery. Mm-hmm. Even like, for our recreation center, we know we had to close that, but guess what came out of that is the adoption of e-games, right, for recreation activity. From the administrative side, we've had to go from paper-based to something like DocuSign. DocuSign is a specific implementation in our system, our campus. But there's other, workflow solutions out there. Grading, that's another one where, there's some AI that's been developed for now, in terms of grading, proctoring as well. And even student organizations, the way they've had to use Zoom, and by the way, Discord, to build a community, that's also a shift. So, I provided many examples, but all these examples have some potential issues. Right. And I think the reason why I say, I love thinking about this transformation, not for the technology piece. It's exciting to do that, but also as you talk about digital transformation, you have to talk about equity, right? You have to talk about privacy issues, ethics, inclusion and equity. So those are the things that really, gets me thinking. It's like, how do we use technology for the purpose of student success, attaining the mission of the university or the institution that you're working for? And how do you essentially improve the experience of folks who are using technology?
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate the simplified definition using just one word. It's the journey. Right. And the other note, which I have reconfirmed year after year doing this type of work, is technology exposes as a topic and as a challenge, as a practice, organizational change, as well as leaders' ability to adapt and change. Because again, sometimes we get that resistance. Like in the past, I used to work for Campus Recreation back in the day. I could see them saying, esports is not recreation. That's not how we define physical exercise as right? Or mental health, delivering services. Like you said, we do this face to face. And during this time, we've been challenged to have to deliver services or take on new forms of delivery different. So, of course, we would never want to be in this circumstance. I am so done with all things COVID, right? But I'm also very hopeful in what we've discovered. And for, I get to kind of joke with you about this, but there's some of these things, these opportunities that we have seen for a long time. Sometimes getting our colleagues in the field to finally try them, I have a hope that they'll continue. And it's nice to have a term or framework like digital transformation to kind of move us along. So I also love to, you always, again, talking about Twitter, you put out really interesting questions to get people talking. One of your tweets was, what do you think is important to be successful for digital transformation? And you specifically directed it with one of your hashtags to CIO chat, Chief Information Officers, which I also would expect to be all kinds of industries, right? Not just higher ed. So what kind of responses did you get, or what would be your answer to what you think is the most important to be successful in digital transformation?
Actually, I received a couple of responses, and one of them was you have to involve the folks that are going to be impacted. It's not like a top-down decision. You have to get folks, bought into that idea. And I think that's a very important part of the equation. And I mentioned cultural shift, right? Organizational shift. So I think this has to be one of the most important pieces of success for digital transformation to happen is there's not just one thing, right? So you have to have the leadership who is committed, not just in name only, but really committed to the idea of using technology to advance the mission of the institution. Second piece is making sure that you do have the technology, the structure to be able to do that, to implement that. But the last piece, I think, is a culture shift. And I think that is when I said it's a journey, digital transformation is a journey, it really is. You just can't go from we're going from this stage to, digital transformation tomorrow. And as a matter of fact, in the EDUCAUSE model, they have it's called 3Ds, right? Digitization, which is converting the analog process, like a paper form, into electronic form. Like DocuSign is a good example for that. And the second stage would be digitalization. So the idea there is that you have digitized processes, and then optimizing that, right? So, and then the third piece is this. Now you start getting to the digital transformation, where the institution is bought into this idea of culture shift, technology shift, organizational shift. So, the question was, what's the most important, aspect or component to be successful? There really isn't one, because I think this is like what some have called the wicked problem. It's like there are problems technology problem where I know I could take 1,000 steps. I know there's a solution to that. But a wicked problem, a complex problem, is one where it involves people, right? And there's many different variables, and oftentimes you can't quantify those. You cannot, there's no such thing as tomorrow this time, this is how it's going to be. It isn't, because it involves behaviors, it involves mindset, it involves so many different things that's happening in the world.
Right. Yeah, the human element of technology, and my background is with social media. I feel like it's kind of your entry, your icebreaker. And that's when I bring in people like you to take that to more macro enterprise, big picture stuff. But the reason why for me, I didn't call my book Digital Transformation, Higher Education, which, well, there's already a model on it, but organizational change and influence does come from humans, individuals, and not just the technology itself. So I'm curious for you as a leader, because you also oversee quite the portfolio with people and products. How do you see DX, which is what it's referred to, digital transformation, and how you show up as a leader?
That's a very good question too. I think For me, I've always defined my role as not a technologist per se, where I look at things from a technology side, but really, how do I use technology to serve the mission, right? So for me, I've been in student affairs for many years, and so I look at it from a student success lens, right? So, and how does this show up to me as a leader? One is, I think to be effective CIO in this time and space, you really have to appreciate and understand why we're doing this in the first place, right? Simon Sinek, who's a prolific author in this field, talks about like start with why, right? And so be able to understand why are we doing this in the first place, and understanding that technology are tools toward those means. You can apply the same principle to other parts of the university research, right? How can we use technology to optimize or transform the way we do things there? Student learning. So as a leader, how do I show up there? One is I need to really understand, why are we doing this in the first place, and to be able to articulate that to my team. As a matter of fact, our mission statement in my department right now, again, it's a student affairs based department, although we have systems all over the campus, is to transform student experience and enable student success. That is our mission statement. It doesn't say anything about technology. Of course, we have different, principles below that in specific ways how we use technology. But so as a leader, you have to start with the why. Second piece is, I believe in the idea of innovation moves at the speed of trust. And the reason why I say that is because in this time of pandemic where you have to, kind of change some things around really quick, if you have the trust, and trust is built, right, through the years, you have to develop the mindset of partnership, of appreciating what other people bring, that, IT really isn't a separate entity in the university. It's like we're part of that. It's like we're like a thread that binds the entire university. We're one of the threads that does that. Third is, change requires a lot of human emotions, right? So that's the reason why I'm spending a lot of my time right now on learning about myself, because I need to understand who I am, what the values that I hold. How can I be a better leader? How can I be more confident, right? How can I be more articulate? How can I be more authentic? How do I show my authenticity in a way that resonates with people? So there's just some of the things that as a leader.
Yeah. Well, and again, that humanistic, approaching it with humanity, as leaders, thinking about self-awareness, trust. I think we've seen a lot of cracks though with leadership in a variety of different fields where that investment was needed, even when we're talking about something like technology. And again, for my work, that evolves around social media and your why, your area, your division, your departments. That is such a cool example of course, the focus is IT and technology, but we have this bigger why that also unifies us through other programs and departments. I was also very inspired by Simon in the book, as everyone who is featured, including you, was asked, what is your why for leading online? And your answer was to live a life of significance by helping others fulfill their potential. So I just wanted to dig in a little bit to your why, because what I featured about you in the book, and you're one of the very first features in chapter 1, is about gratitude. And it's a value. It is a part of the mission of who you are. Every, I swear, panel or conversation we have, somehow gratitude comes up. So can you share just a little bit of background about that why and how it might show up in the work you do, especially how you use social media?
Yeah. I come from a family of folks who sacrificed, right? My grandparents came here, as farm workers in the Philippines, way back in the 1960s. And when my family came over here to the United States, my dad and my mom, and I attribute a lot of my value system based on my parents. My dad worked 3 jobs at a time, right? I still don't know how he did that. And by the way, So he had his, part-time job as a janitor for a mall, and then a janitor for, I think a shop, like a store. And then on his days off, he would still find time to like mow lawns. And by the way, he also owned, my mom and my dad owned a window cleaning business. And so I look at their experience and the sacrifice that they provided for my sister and I, and how blessed I am. And so how can I not be grateful for what I have when I've seen my parents? And they never ask for anything, by the way. The funny thing is the only time they would ask for something is when I get a promotion or get a new job, my business card. They never ask for money. They've always, and that's become a pride and joy. And so, I'm grateful for the fact that, my parents did sacrifice their lives for us. I'm grateful now, after reflection, I'm grateful for these rejections. I'm grateful for the hurt. I'm grateful for the bad experience I've had in the past, because looking back at what I've experienced, that's really shaped me who I am. And so, for me, there's been times where I've been marginalized because of my accent, because of where I came from, my color, and all those things, that the isms, right? And so for me, diversity, equity, and inclusion, those are my core values. And so that's the reason why I spend a lot of time working with first generation students, marginalized folks, and my university. And how does that show up in social media? I try to model myself, and by sharing my vulnerabilities. I've shown my bad grades. I was an AP, and I showed that on social Facebook. And the reason why is because it resonates with some students. To say they see me as a successful person on campus, and in their perspective, I hold a very prestigious position, influential position, but then they see my grades where I was like 1.9, or I almost dropped out a couple of times. And to me, that's where my value comes in terms of, how do I help other people out? It's by sharing my authentic self, sharing that I'm not, there's a lot of things that we've experienced in the past that led us to here. Do I go for scale in terms of like my impact? I can't. I don't. That's not my goal. It's just that I believe in the idea of, there's a TEDx video called Lollipop Moment, right? It's a video. It's a TEDx, and it's a story about, like, you never know when you're going to impact someone, right? I also believe in the idea of Maya Angelou's advice to Oprah, which is, she asks a question, what's your legacy? And I think Maya Angelou says, well, it's the sum of all the people that you've impacted in your lives. So social media, I don't know who I'm impacting, but I'm just modeling, and I'm hoping that by showing the positive, I'm showing my vulnerabilities, that somehow people would resonate with that. How do you measure it? I don't know. There's residual impact, as Simon Sinek would say, right? You never know when that person's gonna pass that on. The gratitude, the optimism, all the things that I display on social media. So I don't go for scale. I'm just hoping that if I impact one person, that's, I've done something.
Well, I'm very grateful for you. And so many examples sharing your values, how you live them, but how you were, it formed you. And one of the acts in the book that I encourage leaders to consider is as you were alluding to, that vulnerability piece. As you shared your grades, and this could be like past stories, like of transformations or challenges, because that, again, it humanizes us. Our positions can be intimidating to our students, or even, like our teams. And so we are also redefining what is leadership. Sometimes I like to say, like, we're not taking ourselves so seriously, because instead we're taking seriously the relationships we're building, not just our status. And I've always found you so relatable. And that's why, obviously, like a lot of people I know and have had my own lived experience with were included in the book because I could vouch for them. I've seen this in action, right? Because sometimes you see some folks, some leaders online where something doesn't quite match up. Like maybe that value, is it actually really salient for them? Do they really mean the words that they speak? And what I've appreciated from you is you're very specific. You can point to your parents or your journey to teach yourself how to was it how to code HTML, which then got you your first job at Santa Barbara? Like your whole career has been there, but it also has been one of your own making, which I mean, maybe just being a small town girl from Wyoming, I just really identify with. So your feature, I felt like because you provided so much background to me, I already could get really into the heart of it. Like, I'm not telling you how to use Twitter or how Joe uses Twitter. You can go watch a YouTube video on that. Let's actually learn how he lives his life and enacts that online. So anyway, I'm just kind of reflecting back a little bit. One other thing that I wanted to connect to was you talked about, even in digital transformation, some ethical considerations, some concerns maybe with marginalized communities related to, I mean, even we've seen some articles of concern about online proctoring and testing and like some of the mechanics that have gone into AI as it relates to students' experiences online courses that they feel are not equitable. So, so tell us a little bit more about that. Again, your note of your own identity and your dedication to serving students that that maybe are first gen, you know, like low income, and how that has guided your path.
Sure. What really grounds me is my weekly conversation with students. So when you talk about our positions being, you know, sometimes intimidating, what I've actually found is that I've had more conversations with students, you know, repeat conversations with students through Zoom. And I've asked them that. It's like, why is it that like it took us 2 years to like connect when we're on school, and then now we're talking almost every other week. It's like there's a sense of, I think, intimidation, I guess, you know, that happens when I'm walking around campus with my suit and everything. And with this Zoom, it's like there's this space that allows for, I don't know, safety, I guess, psychological safety, what you want to call it. But and I say that because they ground me and they remind me of why we need to do things the way we do. You know, so IT and social justice, sometimes maybe folks don't kind of put that together. But really, you know, we talk about equitable practices, right? If we're asking our students, you know, and we're requiring the students now to take classes online, what does that mean? There are students who don't have the basic needs, the basic capacity to, for example, even have computers at home. Right. So at our university, we provided, you know, about 300 Chromebooks through the effort of our AVC for Enrollment Services, you know, and then our IT folks. So in talking about IT and technology and you know, what does that mean to students? You have to think about, are we hindering their success? Are we enabling their success? And one of the projects we're working on right now is implementing gender and lived names into our systems. And that matters a lot. And the reason why is because, especially now in a digital space, that's how we present ourselves. And so folks who go by, you know, certain gender or lived names, when you misgender folks, that's part of their identity, or you call them by, you know, dead names, that really matter. And so it may not, I don't know, I mean, it's not quantifiable per se what that means, but like it really promotes a sense of belonging. Or put another way, it's like exclusion, right? If you don't do that, that's exclusionary. So when I think about technology, I think about IT, I think about what's the impact of students. And the way I do that, it reminds ourselves is go talk to the people that we are impacting.
I think it's a practice that can have a very, actually kind of a quick reach that also continues to send the signal of values, um, just through being able to add those types of components. So it's been heart-lifting, heartwarming to see like those types of practices out there. As we start to wind down, Joe, I know you and I could probably talk for a very long time. It is December 8th. We're moving into celebratory seasons, trying to be grateful. Again, I feel like you're such a champion for gratitude, from sacrifices that our family have provided us, as well as just being grateful for our surroundings. What is something that you are grateful for and celebrating today?
Well, I'm grateful that I'm breathing, for one. It's been sobering to find out about staff and losing loved ones. You see news everywhere about COVID-19, the impact of that. So I'm thankful that I'm still breathing. I'm thankful that my partner and I, my family are healthy. I'm thankful for, and I actually do a journal too. It's like every time I wake up in the morning, I have my 3 gratitudes. I go to sleep, I have my gratitudes. I'm thankful for being able to wake up in a warm home. I'm thankful for the fact that I'm talking with you. I'm thankful for the fact that I have, we have friends who, support us. Thankful for I have bosses. I got so many things to be thankful for. I don't take that for granted because, nothing's guaranteed.
Yeah. There's been scientific studies on the practice of gratitude, like listing them out, like you said, what it does chemically to our brains and bodies, which is it's all good, of just simply writing down what we're thankful for. And I used to be in such a good practice of doing that. So that's a good reminder that maybe that'll be a practice I pick back up.
Yeah. Even before I forget, the people that I really want to thank as well, this is in a professional conversation, that I want to thank my staff. They are the smartest, the most passionate. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say if there's something that, like, an issue comes up, and I kid you not, we use something called Slack. So if a system somehow gets disrupted, within a minute, there's a conversation happening. And they're all helping each other. And so I'm thankful for all the work that they do, because they're committed to each other. They're committed to the students. And so I'm blessed. I'm blessed to be able to work with my staff and my colleagues across the university.
Awesome. Well, last question related to anything that we talked about, or just something on your mind right now. What advice do you have for leaders listening?
I guess it's because I'm in the self-growth right now, but I think, we often, in leadership positions, it's hard, right? Sometimes lonely, sometimes, because you're operating in a different space. But I've come to say this to myself, and I used to say, that sounds arrogant, but like, it's true. It's like, we have to love ourselves. We have to be kind to ourselves. We have to invest in ourselves, because only when we feel full can we serve others. So to me, I've gone to the point where, you have your best relationship with yourself. And so always be kind to yourself, love yourself, because if you don't, how do you expect other people to love you?
Right. Well, that is beautiful, and such a good reminder for those of us that want to do good work, but there's been bumps in the road. We maybe been hard on ourselves, but we want to serve others. We definitely need to love on ourselves a little bit more. Joe, I appreciate you so much. So tempted to take a road trip to come and see you, but this is going to have to do for now. Again, I really appreciate your time, and it was so cool, full circle, to be connected to you early on in this work that I did, and building this whole thing, and then finally getting to feature you in this book and on this live stream today.
Oh, thank you so much, Josie. And by the way, I forgot to tell you, this is the first time I've ever done this. So you talk about another leadership advice. Do something that you're afraid of doing.
Oh, well, you never would know. You're a natural.
Thank you. Thank you
All
for the
right.
opportunity.
Take care. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us on another book club series with Joe. Take these little nuggets and conversations, hopefully for you and your teams. Know that we also have a little bit of a different kind of book club in a digital community that I have for the book called the Digital Leadership Network. You can find that on my website, and I'll drop it in the chat as well, where I'm sharing little nuggets and resources, and we're having dialogue of readers of the book or those that are just interested in the book and can't pick it up quite yet. I've got one more of these planned for 2020. And next week, as Joe kind of hinted to, I am bringing on Melissa Wu, who's the Executive Vice President for Administration and Chief Information Officer at Michigan State University. She's going to be a fantastic one to finish us off for 2020. And I would love to hear how you would love to see these evolve into 2021 as I think about to continue them or to modify them, or maybe even people that I can feature that weren't even in the book as digital leadership continues to grow. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you here next week. Y'all take care.